"You're turning down our offer? Good luck finding something better," the hiring manager said, tossing his head back with a laugh that ricocheted off the glass walls of the conference room. His team shared knowing smirks, as if I had just entertained them rather than challenged them. I tightened my grip on my portfolio as heat crept up my neck. My expertise in rare earth material recycling commands a higher market value. 8 years of specialized experience isn't reflected in this offer. He leaned back, tapping my resume as if it were disposable. "We have 20 eager candidates who would accept this salary without hesitation. Perhaps you've overestimated your importance." Something inside me fractured cleanly. I stood, smoothed my dress, and met his gaze without blinking. "No, I haven't, but you have certainly underestimated it." As I walked out, their snickering followed me down the hallway. 3 weeks of interviews, reduced to mockery. I had 2 weeks before rent was due and a bank account shrinking by the day. What I didn't know then was that within 72 hours, everything would pivot. Before I explain how that moment of humiliation became the greatest career victory of my life, I want you to remember a time someone undervalued you. That tightness in your chest, that quiet fury, that inner voice insisting, "I deserve more." Hold on to that feeling, because what comes next might give you the courage to stand your ground the next time someone tries to diminish your worth. My name is Belinda Arguelle, and until 6 months ago, I was the invisible mind behind one of the most significant advances in rare earth material recycling technology, the kind of innovation environmental researchers and manufacturing executives fantasize about, a process that reduced extraction costs by 42% while increasing yield purity, the kind of breakthrough that splashed across industry magazines with my supervisor's name in bold letters, while mine was absent entirely. I had always been the quiet one, the methodical researcher who stayed late running analyses while others networked over cocktails. My parents, both high school teachers from Puerto Rico who eventually settled in Michigan, raised me to believe excellence would speak loud enough on its own. "Let your work be your voice," my father used to say. I believed that, right up until the moment I sat in the audience at the annual Earth Resources Conference and watched my supervisor, Meredith, present my discovery as her own. She fielded questions about my process. She accepted praise for my results. I sat in the back row, invisible, reduced to a footnote crediting the research team. I had built the chemical bonding theory that made the extraction viable. I had run thousands of tests in a basement lab with obsolete equipment. I had given up weekends, holidays, sleep, and there I was, erased. That night, alone in my hotel room, I made myself a promise. Never again would I allow my work to be minimized. Never again would I stay silent while someone else claimed my brilliance. So when Greenword Technologies reached out, a rising name in sustainable manufacturing wrapped in eco-friendly language and bold innovation claims, I allowed myself a cautious hope. The interview process was intense. 3 technical panels, a full presentation of my research methodology, meetings with 5 department heads. They seemed impressed. The hiring manager, Nolan, had nodded along thoughtfully as I explained molecular separation techniques. Then the offer arrived. The salary was barely above what I had earned as a mid-level researcher. This was a senior role requiring expertise possessed by fewer than 50 people nationwide. The number felt insulting. I prepared for negotiation meticulously. Market data, comparable roles, rehearsed responses. I walked into that conference room ready to advocate for myself. I did not expect to be laughed at. After that meeting, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, hands locked around the steering wheel trying to slow my heart. Had I sabotaged myself in an industry where sustainability budgets were shrinking? Had I just walked away from my only option? My phone buzzed. A text from my sister Lucia. How did it go? I couldn't answer. Back in my small apartment, reheating rice and beans, I finally called her. "You did what?" she exclaimed. "In this economy? Are you out of your mind?" They offered junior-level pay for senior-level responsibility, I said. He laughed when I countered. She sighed. I'm proud of you, but be realistic. Maybe call them back, take the job. I refused. After we hung up, I applied to 14 positions, scheduled 2 interviews, updated every professional profile, calculated my survival window if I cut everything to essentials. 53 days. Tight, but survivable. The next morning, I went for a hard run, trying to outrun the doubt. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe Meredith deserved the credit. I shut that thought down immediately. I knew my worth. I knew what I had built. 3 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. This is Belinda. Ms. Arl, this is Darren Winslow, CEO of Greenword Technologies. I heard you declined our offer. That's unusual. After you left, our engineering team reevaluated your portfolio. Your lithium extraction methodology could transform our production line. The savings are far beyond what we estimated. What would it take to bring you on board? Name your price. I didn't hesitate. I need 3 things: market rate plus 15% for the disrespect, full autonomy leading the materials division, and transparent salary bands across the entire company. No gender or race disparities. He paused. The first 2 are manageable. The third is uncommon. So was laughing at a qualified candidate, I replied. That evening, he called back. The board agreed with a 6-month rollout. I accepted. 2 weeks later, I walked into Greenword Technologies as Director of Materials Sciences. My salary was double the original offer. My signing bonus covered 6 months of rent. By noon, HR sent me compensation data for my entire division. The patterns were exactly what I had expected. Women in comparable positions were earning 22% less than their male counterparts. Employees with Hispanic surnames like mine averaged 18% lower pay than others with identical credentials. The longest tenure staff, especially those who weren't forceful negotiators, were the most underpaid compared to recent hires. I spent my first week learning the workflow, meeting my team, and reviewing ongoing projects. Everyone was courteous, but I could feel their curiosity and maybe a hint of skepticism. Who was this newcomer who had negotiated directly with the CEO? What made her so exceptional? On Friday afternoon, I called a division meeting. 57 employees filled the conference room, including Nolan, who now officially reported to me, a reality he seemed to be grappling with given his tight smile and stiff posture.
Thank you all for welcoming me this week, I began. I've been impressed by the creativity happening here, but I've also noticed areas where we can improve, not just in our technical systems, but in how we value our people. I clicked to the first slide, showing anonymized salary data that revealed the gaps. This is our current compensation setup, with identifiers removed. As you can see, we have serious inconsistencies that don't align with experience, performance, or impact. The room fell silent. Employees leaned in, searching for where they might land on the charts. Over the next 6 months, we'll be implementing transparent salary bands company-wide. Every role will have a clear pay range based on skills and experience, not negotiation tactics. Or, I paused, locking eyes briefly with Nolan, personal bias. If you're enjoying this story so far, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Tap the bell icon so you don't miss part 2, where you'll see exactly how I reshaped that toxic workplace, confronted the people who tried to undermine me, and ultimately achieved the most gratifying professional revenge of my life. Believe me, what comes next is something every undervalued person needs to hear. After the meeting, several employees stayed behind, wanting to talk privately. A research analyst named Paloma approached first, her hands fiddling with her tablet. "What you showed us, is that really happening here?" she asked softly. "Yes, and we're going to fix it." "I've been here 3 years," she admitted. "Last month, I learned my new coworker, a man with half my experience, earns $15,000 more than me. When I mentioned it to Nolan, he said discussing pay was unprofessional." By Monday morning, whispers were circulating throughout the building. Some employees felt hopeful, others wary, and a few, especially those benefiting from the current setup, were openly irritated. At 9:30 a.m., Nolan appeared in my doorway without knocking. "You've stirred up quite a reaction," he said, taking the chair across from my desk without invitation. "The executive team is uneasy about what you showed on Friday." "The data speaks for itself," I replied, continuing to review the project timeline on my screen. "Data can be misread," he insisted. "Some employees negotiate higher pay because of rare skills. Others take less because they value work-life balance or certain perks. Presenting raw numbers without context creates unnecessary friction." I finally looked up. "Is that the logic you used when I negotiated with you? That I lacked unique skills but valued work-life balance?" His jaw tightened. "That situation was different." It wasn't. It matched the exact pattern reflected in the data, but we're moving forward with transparency regardless of how uncomfortable it is for those who've benefited from secrecy. He leaned in. "Look, Belinda, may I call you Belinda?" "Dr. Arvell is fine." A flicker of irritation crossed his face. "Dr. Arvell, then. You're new here. You don't understand our culture, our history. These kinds of sweeping changes could seriously impact morale." "Whose morale exactly? The underpaid employees who just learned they've been systematically undervalued, or the overpaid executives who've profited from that system?" Nolan stood. "The CEO may have approved this plan, but actual implementation requires cooperation across multiple departments. My team controls project budget allocations. Just something to keep in mind." The threat was unmistakable. If I pushed ahead with compensation equity, he'd obstruct my projects. "Thank you for making your stance so transparent," I said evenly. "I appreciate knowing exactly where we stand." After he left, I opened my email and drafted a message to Darren Winslow, outlining the conversation and requesting a meeting regarding project resource allocation. I had zero intention of being intimidated after coming this far. The following weeks were relentless, as mid-level managers quietly sabotaged my progress. Meeting invites vanished from my calendar, critical emails were buried, and lab equipment orders were mysteriously delayed. Yet I wasn't alone. Paloma became my strongest ally, guiding me through the company's political trenches and introducing me to others who had been similarly overlooked. Henry, a brilliant chemical engineer, repeatedly denied promotions despite his innovations, and Daisy, a lab technician whose protocol improvements had been implemented company-wide without credit. Together, we worked late nights refining my extraction method for Greenword's needs, converting an abandoned storage room into a makeshift test lab, and documenting every achievement and obstruction. 6 weeks later, I presented our first prototype results to the executive team, proving a 37% increase in rare earth recovery and a 44% reduction in chemical waste, with millions in potential profit. Darren was impressed. The board asked insightful questions, but Nolan tried to undermine the data, claiming our testing was incomplete and costs unaccounted, until I revealed the fully detailed implementation plan, cost analysis, and a phased rollout requiring only 2 short production disruptions. The board approved expedited funding, and Darren personally praised my work, but Nolan's anger simmered. The next morning, my keycard access was revoked, and our research server was maintenance locked, though Henry's secret backups kept us safe. We pretended to be set back, curious how far Nolan would go. That afternoon, he held an emergency meeting without me, announcing my project would be put on hold for resource assessment. I walked in just as he finished, challenging his authority by reminding everyone the board had approved implementation. He insisted the delay was within his power as Chief Operations Officer, a title I hadn't realized he held. But when I asked if the CEO knew he was overruling a board directive, uncertainty flickered across his face. He tried to maintain composure, insisting it was a postponement, not a cancellation, but the room had already shifted. Interesting, because the only reason I missed the first part of the meeting was my scheduled call with Adaptive Systems, the equipment supplier already contracted for our implementation next week. Murmurs rippled across the room as I added, "That contract was signed this morning by Darren himself," and held up my tablet showing the executed agreement. The color drained from Nolan's face. I immediately shifted the room's attention to the real timeline, spending the next 30 minutes outlining deliverables, assigning responsibilities, and solidifying deadlines, while Nolan sat frozen behind a tight, furious smile.
As the meeting ended, he grabbed my arm and hissed that I was making a serious mistake, that no one was irreplaceable.
I slipped my arm free and replied, "Some people are. The trick is knowing which ones." The following weeks were a whirlwind as the new equipment arrived on schedule and my team worked around the clock, anticipating and neutralizing every subtle sabotage attempt, from incorrect parameters to missing catalysts, while the compensation review advanced. Working with HR and finance, we identified 87 severely underpaid employees, and although the adjustment plan would cost $3 million annually, it paled in comparison to the savings my extraction process was generating. 3 months after my arrival, we activated the new system on the auxiliary line, surpassing projections with a 41% yield increase and 46% waste reduction. The board celebrated. Darren proudly brought investors and clients to tour our facility, and Nolan grew increasingly isolated as executives bypassed him and came directly to me. At the quarterly town hall, Nolan presented before me, blatantly taking credit for improvements my team had created, and I silently noted every misrepresentation. When it was my turn, I calmly corrected each claim, publicly recognizing Henri for his production line redesigns and highlighting every team member's contribution by name. Then I unveiled the results of the compensation equity review, explaining the methodology and emphasizing that a company's greatest asset is its people. The auditorium erupted in applause, while Nolan slipped out a side door. The next morning, Darren summoned me to his office, where Nolan sat with arms crossed, claiming my initiatives were creating division, undermining authority, and building a parallel power structure. I listened, then connected my tablet to the display and revealed meticulously documented evidence of 3 months of targeted administrative obstruction, deleted meeting invitations, revoked lab access, delayed orders, unauthorized timeline changes, each incident small alone, but unmistakable as a pattern when shown together. Nolan flushed red, sputtering that I was twisting routine issues into a conspiracy. "I'm not finished," I continued, switching the display to documentation of credit misappropriation, innovations and improvements created by my team but presented by Nolan as achievements of the operations division, and then to video clips of meetings where he blatantly claimed work he had not done. Most concerning, however, is this, I added, pulling up the email chains Nolan had assumed were private messages, instructing staff to delay or obstruct board-approved projects, a direct violation of company policy and potentially fiduciary responsibility. The room fell into a heavy silence as Darren's expression shifted from concerned to stunned. "How did you get those emails?" Nolan demanded, his voice tight. "Recipients who were uncomfortable with your instructions forwarded them to me," I replied calmly. "Quite a few people, actually." Darren finally spoke. "Nolan, is this accurate?" "It's taken completely out of context," he sputtered, growing desperate. "This woman came in here and disrupted established procedures. She demanded special treatment. The extraction process she implemented will generate $14 million in additional profit this year." Darren cut in sharply. "And the compensation adjustments affect less than 10% of our operating budget while reducing turnover. I'm not seeing the problem." "The problem," Nolan snapped, "is that she's undermining my authority. She went directly to you for this job. She bypassed the chain of command. She demanded special compensation." "I demanded fair compensation," I corrected slowly, "for myself and for others." His face twisted, so I added quietly, "And despite your 15 years of experience, you didn't recognize the value of my extraction method until the CEO explained it to you. You laughed when I stated my worth, and you've tried to sabotage my work ever since." Darren raised his hand. "That's enough. Nolan, I need to speak with you privately. Dr. Arvell, thank you for this information. We will continue our discussion later."
I stepped out but lingered just long enough to hear Darren's voice through the thin walls, sharp, disappointed, unmistakably furious. The board-wide email went out that afternoon, announcing a leadership reorganization. Nolan was being transitioned into an advisory role effective immediately, and operations would report directly to the CEO until a replacement was selected. A week later, Darren called me in and, without ceremony, offered me a promotion, Executive Vice President of Innovation and Operations, a role that combined my current division with oversight of the entire operations team. The compensation number he slid across the desk made me blink. "You've shown exceptional technical expertise and leadership," he said. "You solve problems, stand by your principles, and elevate the people around you. That's what this company needs." I studied him carefully, and the Compensation Transparency Initiative continues? "More than continues," he said. "I want you to accelerate it. The board has reviewed the data. We're going company-wide." I nodded. "In that case, I accept." 6 months after walking out of that humiliating interview, I sat at the head of the same conference room where Nolan had laughed at my counteroffer, only now the space was renovated, the culture transformed, and the company thriving. The compensation review was complete. Every employee understood exactly how their salary was determined. Productivity had risen 23%, and turnover had been cut in half. My extraction process had been fully implemented across all production lines, generating savings beyond our most optimistic forecasts, and already 3 competitors were attempting to license the technology. During a strategic planning meeting, Darren introduced a young environmental specialist named Akira, who approached me afterward with nervous admiration for both the recycling work and the compensation reform. I told her gently, "Never let anyone decide your worth, and never stay silent when you see others being undervalued." As she walked away, a news alert lit up my phone. My former employer, the one where Meredith stole my work, had fallen behind in the industry. Their stock had dropped 30% in 3 months. I smiled and closed the notification. Sometimes the best revenge isn't destruction, it's building something better for yourself and everyone who comes after you. And if my story resonates, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share in the comments when you demanded your worth or when you wish you had. Remember, knowing your value isn't arrogance, it's self-respect, and sometimes it's how you change an entire system.